Tuesday, November 16th, 2004. The world is introduced to Half-Life 2, a game that will revolutionize FPS games with its graphics, gameplay, and gunplay. That's right! Half-Life 2 is celebrating its 20th anniversary today. Like, literally, today. Can't believe Half-Life 2 is 20 years old. So as you can see, it looks like Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and Half-Life 2 Episode 2 were merged into Half-Life 2. Now, that actually came out yesterday. Oh shit! So did Half-Life 2 Lost Coast. Neat. There's also a workshop too. Okay. Aim assist? Okay, aim assist would be very useful. Aim assist on controller? Neat. Okay. So, no more. Okay, so it keeps my achievements for Half-Life 2 for the original Half-Life 2. But I have to do Half-Life 2 Episode 1s again. Does that mean I have to do episode 2s again? What? If you're reading this, Gabe Newell has... Wait. If you're reading this achievement, Gabe Newell has successfully launched Noam Chomsky into space. If you did not also receive this achievement manufacturing extent, Newell has abandoned his plans to shoot Noam Chomsky into space. Wait, this is the Nova achievement! I never did that! Okay, hang on. I'm telling Knox this because him and I were talking about this yesterday. Okay, he's offline. But still, apparently, now I have the Gnome achievements. Thank God. Because I was not gonna do I was not going to do that achievement. Okay. So let's start with a new game. Oh yeah! Commentary tracks were added too. So commentary was added into Half-Life 2 Lost Coast. So it seems like Valve added commentary to Half-Life 2. And I think so. So this is gonna be in the entire campaign. Like, I'm actually gonna do an entire series on this. So let's start. Commentary mode is currently on. Commentary nodes contain audio commentary by the Valve development team. To start or stop a node, aim at any balloon icon and press your use key. You'll be invulnerable to damage while listening to a node. Achievements cannot be earned in commentary mode. Good to know, because I have most of the achievements already. It feels so good to be back in this game. I love it.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine. Not that I wish to imply you have been sleeping on the job.
It's been a while, G-Man.
No one is more
been a while.
deserving of a rest, and all the effort in the world would have gone to waste until... Well,
And we know that's the anti-mass spectrometer from Half-Life 1. There's a Citadel. Maybe after I'm done with this, I should replay Half-Life 1 Episode 1 and Half-Life 2 Episode 1. So, wake up, Mr. Freeman. Wake up and smell the ashes. Okay, Chapter 1. Point insertion.
I didn't see you get on.
Yeah, because G-Man spawned me in.
This is my third transfer this year.
Oh, I didn't know this. And here's the first node.
Well, end of the line.
There it is. Let's start.
I'm Gabe Newell, and welcome back
Gabe
to
Newell!
Half-Life 2. It's been a long 20 years since
Oh,
its
yeah.
release. In this anniversary update, we've tried to respond to as many of the community's requests as possible. And while
Because
this
Valve
might be
is
the absolute #1 request
just
right
like
now,
that.
I often hear how much people would like a commentary mode, so we're excited to finally make that happen. Not only was it a challenge to remember many of the details of Half-Life 2's development,
I bet.
but it's not easy to crack open decades-old computer code and wonder what the hell you were thinking way back then. Along with the dev commentary, we've cleaned up a bunch of old bugs and tried to leave things in better shape than we found them. And at least this time, we have the luxury of knowing how things turned out in the end. To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. And please, let me know what you think. You can reach me at gaben@valvesoftware.com. Thanks, and have fun.
Thanks, Gabe. I will have fun. Okay, I'm gonna turn up a mouse sensitivity. Mouse acceleration.
Welcome to City 17.
Next one.
Physics objects. It might be hard to remember it now, but back when Half-Life 2 came out, small objects in games, like these bits of trash, were usually...
Oh yeah, Half-Life 2 was revolutionary when it came out.
It was in a very simple way. If you were lucky, they might break apart into some sprites if you hit them. One of the goals for this initial...
I mean, I was 6 when it came out, so I was like way too late
physically actually being simulated
with this
in
game.
Half-Life 2. They could be picked up, dropped, thrown, broken, moved by other forces, you name it. Here we're starting with just a small thing, showing that trash is being blown by the arrival of the train, or, more specifically, an invisible volume that's triggered by the player leaving the train.
Okay.
Train station. The beginning of a Half-Life game has a big job to do. We have to introduce players
So if
to the
I'm
world while teaching
not
them how to
mistaken,
interact with it.
these guys are either still with Valve or they left, or and Valve just reached out to them for this commentary update.
Takes a lot of iteration and playtesting, especially on the small moments that make up a bigger picture of the game. In this section, we'll highlight some key moments, game design problems, and a few playtests where things didn't quite go as planned.
Establish my administration here in the Citadel so thoughtfully.
Oh yeah, hey.
Our benefactor.
So, heartbreaking news. A couple weeks ago, Tony Todd passed away. So you might know Tony Todd is like the voice of Venom in Insomniac Spider-Man, and the Vortigaunts in Half-Life 2 Episode 2 and Half-Life Alyx. It's heartbreaking, really. He was such an amazing actor.
I've been proud to call City 17.
Let's start with this one.
Sweeping Vortigaunt. Another key moment of storytelling and another nod to the physics system. Here,
This
we're
sounds like
seeing
AI.
Vortigaunts fit into this new world, which is a big shift from their Half-Life 1 role as enemies. Like so many moments in Train Station, the Sweeping Vortigaunt came from our constant hunt for ways to show characters interacting naturally with the physics system. Why just tell players Vortigaunts are friendly now, when you can show one casually sweeping the floor and knocking around some simulated objects? Nothing signals, hey, don't shoot me this time around, like someone willing to tidy up.
Yeah.
Welcome.
MetroCop shoving citizens. We've only walked a few feet and we're already got problems to solve.
Yeah,
We're introducing the
you know what I
MetroCop
mean by
in a
that.
way that eventually we're going to
By
ask players
what
to
Josh
kill,
means by that.
giving you a glimpse of the world they're stepping into. It's a simple, clear moment that shows the relationships between the MetroCops and citizens, and by extension, the player. At the same time, we decided to reinforce the existence of the core physics simulation, showing the way in which NPCs can casually interact with objects in the world. Seeing something like a suitcase knock into another and dislodge was pretty novel back then. These moments at the train station where we combined multiple goals were the most successful. They felt natural, like the game wasn't pausing just to teach you a lesson.
Were you the only ones on that train?
Citizens. When it came time to design the human citizens of City 17 and the world outside the city, we chose to include a variety of races, ages, and genders. This not only provided context for the combat.
Yeah, I noticed that with
humanity.
When I first played Gary's mod.
Us that anyone playing the game could see
they had like a bunch of diversity with the citizens.
Everyone on Earth united against the combat.
You saw black citizens, Asian citizens.
Candidates to use as reference in creating these citizens through our daily lives and connections.
That's pretty much all I can remember.
To advertising in the Seattle Times classifieds to reach the desired range of faces that we'd envisioned.
I've been proud to call City 17 my home. And so, whether you are here to stay or...
Natural storytelling. To achieve our world building and storytelling goals throughout the train station, we needed a natural way to deliver dialogue without it feeling too gamey or requiring tutorials. We noticed players often approached NPCs to get a closer look, so we turned that into an opportunity for the NPCs to acknowledge the player and deliver their lines. This kept interactions low-key, which was essential since the citizens aren't exactly too cheerful or lively. The simplicity of this approach also aligned with one of Half-Life's core storytelling goals, making the narrative responsive to the player's interest. Some players want to dig into every detail, while others just want to know what to do next.
I'm around that both.
Over how much story they want to
like I'm searching for Easter eggs and
blocking progress.
Wanting to continue on with the story as quickly as possible.
Plus, the less complicated a feature is,
really depends on the game, though.
The more of it we can include.
This is what I meant by acknowledging the player.
Don't drink the water. They put something in it to make you forget. I don't even remember how I got here.
Oh, it's that line. Really glad I did that.
They're always departing, but they never arrive. And the ones that do arrive, they never leave. You never see them go. I see they took your suitcase too. They can't get away with this much longer.
Yeah, they can. They're like the rulers of Earth.
Early tech planning. Shipping a game always teaches us a lot. We finally get to find out which choices we made were good ones, and which were ones we should do differently next time. So after Half-Life 1, when we sat down to start thinking about what kind of sequel we could build, we had all kinds of player feedback to digest. From it, we tried to build a master list of things that Half-Life 2 was going to focus on. We didn't try to design a specific player experience. Instead, we found it more useful to approach the question from a technological standpoint. Black Mesa's security guards and scientists had worked well. What could we do if we pushed it really, really hard on characters? We liked our interactive storytelling. What could we build that would allow us to do even more of it, and a greater variety? The exploration and interaction with the Black Mesa was compelling to players. Maybe a physics system would allow us to take that further. In all these areas, we tried to imagine the best version of it could look like years in the future, and back solve from that a set of technological steps that might get us there.
Storytelling. Creating a sense of immersion was a core principle in our approach to Half-Life 1's storytelling, and it led us to the self-imposed constraints of never, or at least very rarely, taking control away from the player and of keeping the player's avatar silent.
Yeah.
These limitations
that was a really good choice.
But we felt it was important to stay with them.
I can't even imagine Gordon with a voice.
Our hope was that by maintaining these principles, we'd push ourselves to explore deeper, more interactive storytelling.
I've been proud to call City 17 my home. And so, whether you are here City 17.
Hey, Barney.
This must be characters.
Hey, Mark Laidlaw. Okay, so they did bring back like old.
Could best be described as archetypes, not individuals.
They did bring back old devs because Mark Laidlaw doesn't work with Valve anymore.
Fidelity we could achieve at the time.
Okay, that's good to know.
But as our technology improved with Half-Life 2, we saw an opportunity to move beyond abstractions. The increased visual fidelity of the character models, combined with improvements in animation, made us believe we could focus on creating individual characters, people you would actually care about. We allowed ourselves to write real dialogue and have characters deliver it in a way that felt realistic enough for players to not think about them as pawns in a video game, and hopefully propel our narrative forward. In 2001, a couple of years into development, we were energized by Japan Studios' Ico. Directed by an animator, it blew us away with its reliance on characters as the key connection to the player, giving us the courage to keep pushing forward.
Okay, I had to listen to that commentary. Wait a minute. This looks like HDR. Because original Half-Life 2 didn't have HDR. Yeah, it does. It does have HDR.
About that beer I owed you. It's me,
Hey, Barney.
Barney from Black Mesa. Hey, sorry.
Yeah, last time I saw you, you were in Blue Shift.
I've been working undercover with Civil Protection. I can't take too long or they'll get suspicious. I'm way behind on my beating quota.
Yes, Barney, what is it? I'm in the middle of a critical test.
Sorry, Doc, but look who's here.
Great Scott! Gordon Freeman! I expected more warning.
Yeah, you and me both, Doc. He was about to board the express to Nova Prospect.
Well, Barney, what do you intend?
I'm thinking
Headed to your lab, finding Alex.
Somewhere. She would have a better idea how to get him here.
Oh, as long as he stays away from checkpoints, we should be okay. Listen, I gotta go, Doc. We're taking enough chances as it is.
Very well. And, Gordon, good to see you.
Okay, Gordon. You're gonna have to make your own way to Dr. Kleiner's lab.
Wait, hang on. Hang on. Sorry. I just thought of something.
And that's what I...
Did they add a first-person model, a third-person model for Gordon?
I was afraid of.
Okay. Damn it, it's the same thing!
You blow my cover. Pile up some stuff to get through that window and keep going till you're in the plaza. I'll meet up with you later.
Blocking tutorials. At times, we need to be certain the player has learned something.
Man, I was really hoping they'd actually give Gordon a third-person model instead of that low-poly version from Half-Life 1.
To be able to continue. We try to disguise these gates as something natural, so it doesn't feel like the game has come to a halt. Of course, time, resources, or the environmental context itself can make that tricky. In this case, we needed to teach the players how to move objects, so a simple stacking puzzle seemed like the best solution. We tested more complex designs, but they ended up being less effective at teaching the actual thing we needed the player to learn.
Blocking tutorials 2. There are two failures of note in this tutorial. First, players can break it by tossing all the boxes out the window, which is obviously not great. This leaves them stuck and unable to continue, which we consider a game-stopping bug that must be fixed. A clean solution would have been to tweak the window or crate sizes so that the player could fit through but not the crates. The problem was that we really only caught this problem late in development, and making even a simple change like that can have unpredictable game-breaking consequences, and right before launch no less. Also, this issue was purely theoretical. We'd never actually seen players do it. Our playtests of the design space had gone smoothly, with players learning what they needed and moving on. So changing the room's design this late in the game could have disrupted that success in ways that we couldn't foresee. so we opted for a more conservative fix rather than something elegant. If you're curious, try tossing all the boxes out the window and see what happens.
Blocking Tutorials 3. The second failure in this tutorial space is a case of misteaching, where we accidentally teach the players something we didn't intend. This can be hard to avoid without extensive playtesting, since the game is always teaching, even when it's not by design. We cover a more extreme example of this later in Train Station. Some cases of misteaching are critical to fix, like if the player learns the wrong way to use a weapon or interact with a common element of the game. But this one was more subtle. While teaching players to move objects, we also taught them to stack physics objects to escape a space. Normally that's fine, except we don't deploy that puzzle later in the game, and teaching something irrelevant just clutters up their mental toolkit and makes it harder to readily keep useful things in mind later on. Worse, stacking objects to escape the play space become a problem later on, something we had to actively prevent in multiple areas. With so many physics-based objects in the game, blocking this behavior without putting ceilings everywhere wasn't really an option. In the end, we hoped players wouldn't overthink this early lesson, and when playtests showed players getting stuck later on, we made sure not to remind them of it.
Fall damage. Teaching players how to do things is an essential thing for the game to do. But for them to make confident decisions, they also need to understand the more subtle rules. This small moment covers two of those. First, it shows how far the player can fall without taking damage. Second, it introduces a bit of the game's vocabulary, how the game will communicate with them. Players often worry about taking fall damage, but they also worry about taking a step that they can't take back. So here, a welcoming crate to land on signals that dropping down is safe and it's the way forward. And when the crate breaks, it reinforces the physics simulation, and is likely the first time players will see that larger objects can be broken apart.
It's true. Yeah, by the way, there's nothing back here. Ah, yes, pick up that can. You die first.
Pick up that can.
Pick up that can.
Visualizing tutorials, creating a story scenario in which they happen, lets us do more than just stop the game to teach players something. We get to add narrative value to the moment. Here, teaching the player how to throw objects is combined with a narrative setup.
I should have thrown at him.
And how to respond. After watching the Metro cops casually abuse citizens, it felt right to put the player in a similar position next. If they had opinions on how the citizens should have reacted, now they get to express them. Playtesting showed most players either complied or refused the request to pick up the can.
Of course they did.
But some tried to avoid
it's like a meme in the community.
Others would comply initially, then retaliate after feeling humiliated. By keeping the moment relatively constrained, in both terms of player actions and the space itself, we could generally react appropriately to whatever choice they made.
I can pick up the can again.
Far-reaching implications. It requires radical rethinking and revision.
Playtesting. Playtesting is a core part of how we make games. We can never fully predict how players will respond or what they'll take away from what we've built. So we test to learn and hopefully improve. During a playtest, we don't guide or talk to the player, even if they're stuck, as it's extremely unlikely that we'll be sitting there next to the player once the game ships. Our goal is for testers to forget that they're playtesting altogether and play as if they're at home. Any interruptions risk skewing the data, so we only step in if there's a bug that's blocking progress, or more rarely, if their behavior is so confusing that we need to understand what they're thinking.
But inseparable from
Yeah, and apparently the Metro cops are actually actually citizens who she just used the Force.
Early in a Half-Life game, one of our goals is to make promises to the player, giving them a sense of what to expect later on. From movies to TV shows and books, all great entertainment does this in some way.
By the quality of this quote unquote mic, I'm guessing she left.
Some are simple, like offering
I'm not
just
entirely
a
sure,
glimpse
but
of something intriguing. Others are more layered, like the interactions with Metro Cops. By putting the player in a powerless position against them, we set the stage for that future moment when they can finally get to retaliate.
as I was saying, the Metro Cops are actually the citizens.
The Citadel. We wanted the player's first view of City 17 to highlight the Citadel and its dominance over the city, representing the Combine
And they made the
Company's
best
total power
choice.
over humanity. It also needed to serve as a clear goal. Even at the start, you can see where your journey ends. But despite its massive size, playtesters often missed it. A player's sense
How?
of depth and scale can be tricky on a computer monitor.
Uh.
If you've played any games in VR, you'll likely have noticed that scale feels more natural.
Yeah, we noticed this in Half-Life Alyx with how massive the Citadel is.
Which may be because FPS games train players to focus straight ahead or down at their feet. To improve the chances of players taking in the Citadel, we added birds flying towards the structure. A subtle trick we found helps guide the player's view.
Oh, there's more. Okay.
Exploration. After being herded through the train station by Metro Cops, we wanted to give the player a chance to explore. This plaza offered several ways to interact with citizens, Metro Cops, scanners, and the city infrastructure. We aimed for these interactions to continue building the world without needing explicit tutorials, and we refined them until they worked naturally, without any real training.
Correction, huh?
Let me read a letter I recently received. Dear Dr. Breen.
Okay.
Why has the
ropes? One of the things we noticed in all of the reference images that we gathered for City 17 was that there were cables and wires everywhere, and that they were a large part of
I mean, for the time, they're really nice representation of wires.
Enmeshed in the haphazard web of modern life. We felt like we needed a solution for cables, ropes, and similar elements, and we wanted them to be dynamic. Our level designers were eager to create plug puzzles, and connecting a cord to each plug helped players better understand the mechanics.
I'll see that in Kleiner's lab.
Early in production, we built a rope system and iterated on it throughout development. Under the hood, each rope is made of multiple segments stretched between the two endpoints, and they can move independently. Each segment acts like a spring and responds to forces in the game, such as a gentle wind or the passing of a Combine gunship overhead. When rendered, each segment is shown facing the camera and is bump mapped, which is crucial for giving the ropes a realistic, rounded appearance.
immortality is
Playtesting Anecdote 1. One memorable playtest reminded us that we can never be certain what players are thinking or what lessons they've taken from their experience. This tester, after playing from the start and stuck trying to open a door, spent several minutes going back and forth between the game and the keyboard settings. When we asked what they were looking for, they said they were searching for the inventory controls, thinking they could use an item they
that's
picked up
cool.
earlier to unlock the door.
Hey, sorry.
I'd seen them collect and drop several
I'll wait
physics
until this is
objects.
done.
They'd misunderstood what was happening. The tester believed that pressing the use key while holding an object moved it into an inventory because the item dropped straight down. We knew it was just gravity, but their assumption wasn't crazy. Some adventure games of that era did slide items into an invisible inventory that way. We explained there was no inventory, and the playtest continued. Later, we considered whether we needed to address this, but since no other playtesters had the same confusion, and all of our potential solutions were more heavy-handed than necessary, we decided it was an outlier that was okay to remain unaddressed. It served as a good reminder, though, of how even the most subtle, overlooked details can mislead a player.
Okay, so I'm on the Steam app right now. I went to my profile, and not only does it say that I'm playing Half-Life 2, it also says the chapter I'm on, which is point insertion.
and covertly compels us away from change and progress. Instinct, therefore, must be...
It's just me, or is...
It must be fought tooth and nail, beginning with the basis.
Strider.
That's a
This
Strider.
simple moment is a promise that you'll encounter this enormous thing
Yep.
later in the game. Even an
It takes 6
uncomplicated
rockets to
such as
take down.
this really does require a lot of playtesting and iteration.
Or 1 Combine
because of
ball.
Half-Life's goal of not taking control away from the player. As you can imagine, it takes a lot
Wait,
of
does it?
small tweaks to
No,
ensure
wait.
as many players as
I think it takes
possible
6
are looking
balls
at the
to
right
take
place
him
at the
down.
right time here. The street layout and the metro
It's been a
cops
while.
are
It's been
all
like a
set to
long
guide
time
the
since I
player's
played Half-Life
gaze,
2.
perfectly framing the Strider when it appears.
Early game exploration. Up until this plaza, the player likely hasn't had to think much about their path, as it's been clear and straightforward. But here, we wanted to encourage exploration, which meant making the way forward less obvious, which can produce a feeling of being lost or, worse, confused, as you might expect. These kinds of shifts can be tough, especially early in the game, when the player is still learning the game's guidance cues. Here, it's further complicated by force-fielded checkpoints, which allow NPC citizens to move through, but restrict the player, leading many playtesters to believe that there was a way to bypass them. Ultimately, it was extensive testing that helped us find the right visibility for the alley forward, using lighting, layout, and a wooden crate, an object players have already used as a sign they're headed in the right direction, all to subtly guide them forward.
I wonder if they do something like the G-Man sightings, because I'm really curious to see their
Closed captions. During Half-Life 2 development, we were approached by folks interested in accessibility who encouraged us to go beyond the subtitle system we had built for Half-Life 1.
There wasn't any subtitles in Half-Life 1.
System to capture all game sounds, not
Were
just
they?
This turned out to be a much tougher challenge.
I mean, I know there wasn't in the expansions, but
and categorizing them for captions was crucial. Prioritization was also key.
hang on, let me look it up.
Stand out, and it had to be clear who
Neat.
was speaking.
By the way, this is like the perfect time to get the Half-Life games because they are
But less so if there was
they're 90% off.
Our level designers
Off right now.
often reuse sounds in different contexts.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
So sound might require captioning in one area, but not in another. Ultimately, every sound in the game ended up with its own caption data, formatted almost like a small version of HTML, giving us control over the visual style of each caption.
Yep,
As with the audio files,
they're all on sale. A lot of them are on sale.
So we built an asynchronous caching system to handle it efficiently.
But yeah, and apparently, also, Left 4 Dead 2's anniversary is coming up. Oh, I'm really curious to see this.
Physics simulation. Even though we began Half-Life 2 with a functional third-party physics simulation,
That's what it
it
means.
took us years of additional work both on the simulation itself and its integration into the game until we felt like we could meet our designers' ambitions. Maintaining a shippable level of quality and performance was something we knew would be a challenge along the way.
This is what they mean by physics, I would think.
What to simulate and to what extent. We can't simulate everything, and even if we could, there are game design reasons why the experience is better when we don't. In many cases, we deliberately bend the simulation to improve the player's experience. These adjustments usually go unnoticed because they align with player intentions. For example, we disable collisions between the player and large objects to let them turn in narrow spaces. Or we tweak the Combine rifle's alternate fire to gently guide the Combine ball toward enemies, making it more effective.
Before I'm gonna pick this up. That. And apparently this is a reference from an episode of the X-Files. If I'm not mistaken.
Crate Baby.
Yeah.
This small baby doll has a long legacy. During the long months of internal testing, some of the team turned it into a challenge, a way to make the 47th playthrough of a game a bit more fun. They'd place the doll inside of a nearby blue crate and see how far they could carry it throughout the game.
Yeah.
After Half-Life 2 launched, the community started carrying Crate Baby as well, adding their own stories and rules to the mix. A few years later, while working on Episode 2, this was the inspiration for the Little Rocket Man achievement, where players had to carry a garden gnome dubbed Gnome Chomsky throughout the entire
Apparently I have that achievement now, even though I've never done it.
Left 4 Dead 2 in the Garden Gnome achievement, where players had to carry him through the Dark Carnival campaign. These kind of interactions with players are some of the most rewarding parts of game development. We design games with theories in mind, but you never really know where things are going until players get their hands on it.
Physics Simulation 2.
Ah.
Areas where game design or other constraints impacted the physical simulation
It's
often
not.
required extra tuning to keep the simulation from blowing up. As an example, early on we experimented with increasing the simulation on the player entity, which is to say, make player movement much more a part of the physical simulation of the world. We knew this might make movement feel less precise, but hoped it could lead to some novel experiences. However, after tuning the movement to match the less simulated version, we hit a major problem. The physical force needed for the player to move at their usual speed was so high that simply running into other simulated objects could result in death from the impact. We iterated on it, but ultimately couldn't find a solution we liked and reverted to the less simulated movement. However, this wasn't exactly the easier path. It introduced new challenges with how the less simulated player interacted with the more simulated objects in the game. But it did allow us to deliver the precise movement experience we wanted.
Was it gonna mention something about the playground?
Playground. When we discussed ways to highlight our physics simulation around the city environment, a playground felt like the natural fit. And for players paying attention to Dr. Breen, it's also a reminder of the cost of humanity's surrender to the Combine. We chose a few playground structures with interesting physics potential and began tuning them. Even with the advanced physics simulation we had at the time, setups like this always required hand tuning, as we had fully simulated objects interacting with non- or partially simulated ones, such as the player or static world geometry. It might be easy to assume that a simulation can carry a lot of the load of implementation, but even now, 20 years later, that is rarely the case. Back when we were working on the playground, late in development on the game, we couldn't get the friction on the slide to feel right, so we decided to break the ladder so the player couldn't get up there. However, you still can just walk right up the front. As is commonly the case, you, the player, get the last laugh on us.
Let's see if that's true. Ah, he's right. But you can't walk up here. So apparently, the playground was meant to seem like yeah, there's no children in this. Because the suppression field,
materials and shaders. Half-Life 2
which prevents
a significant shift in 3D graphics, where
humans from procreating.
To materials and shaders. In Half-Life 1, every surface had a texture, essentially an image wrapped onto the polygons of the surface. But by Half-Life 2, just 5 years later, every surface had both a material and a shader. The shader was a lump of code that customized how the surface was rendered. The material defined properties for how the surface behaved physically and how it responded to gameplay features. It also held references to textures and other parameters for the shader to use for rendering. As a result, artists and designers had much more control over how things looked and behaved. However, this came with a trade-off. Half-Life 1 could run on a computer with only a CPU, but Half-Life 2 required a GPU because the computations needed for materials and shaders were specifically designed for GPU hardware. The refracting glass door here is a clear example of a custom shader, but every surface in the scene is actually running a shader of some kind.
Cube maps. With the addition of materials and shaders, we needed a solution for reflective
I know this from Gmod.
steel. These surfaces had to know what to reflect, but in 2003 we couldn't do any of that rendering in real time.
True.
So we developed the cube map system for pre-computed reflections. A cube map is a set of 6 images on the inside of a cube, capturing the environment in every direction, like a panoramic photo that surrounds you on all sides. Level designers placed invisible marker entities throughout the levels, and during map compilation we generate a cube map at each marker. Then, during gameplay, when rendering a reflective surface, we locate the nearest pre-computed cube map to create the reflection.
Was that you knocking? I didn't even know we still had a door.
No.
Oh, I thought you were a cop.
He's one of us.
Field of view. In Half-Life 1, we used a 90-degree field of view, or FOV, which was fairly standard for first-person shooters at the time.
Yeah.
But during Half-Life 2's development, we grew unhappy with it. With our game's focus on characters, we'd put extensive effort into detailed facial and body animations. But the 90-degree FOV just didn't allow players to get close enough to fully appreciate that detail. So we began experimenting with a tighter FOV and ultimately landed on 75 degrees. It took some adjustment for both us and players, and it required an additional FOV for view models, which are the player's weapon, held at the bottom of the screen. Their models were originally built with 90 degrees in mind, so they looked distorted at 75. But this change succeeded in doing what we wanted, putting our characters front and center in the game.
Reference maps.
As our characters grew more lifelike between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2, we wanted the game world to feel equally realistic.
And it does.
In Half-Life 1, the limitations of first-person games often made it easier to lean on stylized or abstracted environments. But with Half-Life 2, we set out to create a setting that felt grounded in reality, which meant focusing on a lot of small details we hadn't before. One of our main steps was creating reference maps to standardize how we'd map real-world proportions into the game. These maps establish details like wall and door dimensions, doorknob heights, interior lighting, furniture scale, and the general scale of common objects. We created standardized textures for level designers, complete with scale and lighting values, so layouts would be consistent from the start. Besides setting up the physical world, these reference maps defined how the player would move through it, how high they could jump, how low they could duck, and the size of spaces like vents. Using these maps as foundation, we were able to keep our world geometry consistent and ensure realistically sized spaces across the game.
Okay.
I can't take it anymore.
Oh, what is this?
What are we going to do?
Why is this here?
Missing material. Early
Oh,
our low-level graphics
it's supposed to be there in the development mode. That's actually pretty clever.
When this happened, you typically just see black where the polygon should be, which could easily.
So I guess this is Valve's way of like, hey, this is what a missing texture looks like.
More reliably, we created an error.
And yes, we know that this isn't in the actual game, so we added it to show you what we mean by this.
Purple and black checkerboard texture, which has since taken on a life of its own, well beyond Half-Life 2.
Oh yeah, I guess this is like the first time Valve has actually acknowledged Gears Mod, isn't it? I mean, I know Valve approached like the modder that, hey, and that's Ellen McLean right there, pre-GLaDOS.
The raid. The section ahead, where the Metro Cops raid the apartment while the player is inside, took a lot of iteration to get right. Generally, we design Half-Life to let players set their own pace, since people move through the game in a variety of ways. Some players run, ignoring anything that doesn't seem like a threat, while others methodically poke at everything. So, whenever we need to force a specific pace, it's always a challenge to ensure players perceive that pace and naturally play along. Since this is the first time we do this, we had to put in a lot of work to make it clear to the player that they needed to move quickly, and there's no time for exploration here.
The Raid 2. In addition to making sure the player felt the pressure to move forward, we had to ensure the raid itself was foolproof. There couldn't be any way for the player to avoid it or double back past the Metro Cop. The real challenge wasn't
unless
that
you're a
players would try to
speedrunner.
break the scene, but that many would panic and run in random directions once they realized they were under threat for the first time. This moment requires a delicate balance. We wanted a heart-pounding escape, the sense of real danger, but we wanted players to make it through on their first try and feel like they escaped by the skin of their teeth. To achieve this, we kept the path ahead clear and reminiscent to the one they had just taken through the previous floor. A series of carefully placed triggers controls the threats appearing ahead and behind, maintaining the pressure while still giving players enough time to stay ahead of their pursuers.
You were saying? I guess I'm missing the constant couple. Okay, so no nodes here. Okay. Yeah, he died.
Health and no HUD. The rooftop chase sequence posed a unique design challenge. We didn't want it to be a true gameplay obstacle, and our best case was for players to make it through on their first try.
That's a good thing.
We still wanted to create the sense of real danger, where players felt
yeah,
legitimately
really feeling the danger.
moving. The challenge was that without the HEV suit, players don't technically have a heads-up display or HUD, which means no way to show damage or remaining health. After some experimenting, we created a special health system for this section, using a red glow around the screen to indicate damage. Players reacted as we hoped, taking it as a sign to keep moving, and the chase unfolded as intended. To top it off, we made health regenerate quickly so the glow wouldn't linger, reinforcing to players that running was indeed the right choice, and ensuring players weren't taken down by a stray bullet at the end just because they dawdled or hesitated earlier on.
Ow. So this is what they mean. So when a commentary mode is on, then I have God mode.
Playtesting anecdote 2. In the upcoming section, we needed the player to be knocked down so Alex could save them. With limited time and resources, we simplified the encounter as much as possible, reusing existing systems and letting it play.
There's probably going to be a lot of episodes with how slow this goes.
When the player died.
I don't mind.
After a few playtests to fine-tune the timing, we moved on. But as we got close to shipping, we encountered a problem with a playtester who quick-saved constantly and immediately hit quick-load whenever they thought they'd failed. When a Metro cop hit them, they quick-loaded before Alex could step in, repeating this more than 10 times before we asked them to stop. At this stage of development, in the final bug-fixing phase, we had to limit ourselves to fixing only game-breaking issues, since even small changes could risk breaking something more important. Knowing this was a rare edge case, because most players had no trouble, we made a few conservative changes. We shortened the delay between the knockdown and Alex's first line, and changed the fade-out color to white instead of black, which wasn't ultimately that useful since players hadn't died enough yet to associate black with death. We considered disabling quick load for the few seconds that the scene plays out, but we were worried that could introduce a bug where quick load became disabled permanently.
Okay. That means up here now. So we have to let this play out so Alex can save us.
No, you don't.
Hey Alex, it's been a while.
Dr. Freeman, I presume. We better hurry. The Combine can be slow to wake, but once they're up, you don't want to get in their way. Dr. Kleiner said you'd be coming this way. I don't think it occurred to him that you might not have a map.
Alex. Nailing Alex's design was a big challenge. We wanted the player to both respect and care for her. Saving Eli was a key player goal midway through the game, and we knew that getting players to care about that goal would be easier if they also cared about Alex and her relationship with her father. We intentionally designed, wrote dialogue, and cast a voice actor for Alex to be savvy, capable, and relatable within the Combine-controlled world.
Merle
while
Dandridge,
also making her attractive and charismatic.
who would go on to be in
We aimed
The
to
Last of
avoid
Us.
the objectification, exaggeration, and hypersexuality that many games of the 2000s
Yeah.
featured, as we felt that would undermine our goals for her character.
I mean, she is an attractive character, but she's not like overly attractive, like hypersexualized.
I'm Alex Vance. My father worked with you back in Black Mesa. I'm sure you don't remember me, though. Man, a few words, aren't you?
NPCs on elevators. We often spend a significant amount of time solving problems that players might not even notice. Many of these are subtle design challenges, while others stem from multiple systems interacting with each other. For example, getting non-player characters to ride in elevators posed a complex problem because it involved various systems, NPC AI decision-making, navigation planning, and movement simulation, to name a few. Additionally, the elevator itself had its own simulation requirements unrelated to NPCs. One of the more subtle challenges came from the fact that we simulate NPCs at a slower rate than we simulate elevators. This meant that NPCs on a descending elevator would simulate to make sure they were properly standing on the elevator, and then the elevator would simulate a few times, each time moving further down the elevator shaft, subtly leaving the NPC behind. Shortly after that, the NPC would simulate a second time and pop itself down on the elevator floor once again. You can imagine that it was hard to take Alex seriously when she was constantly falling down in small increments.
Yeah, I imagine.
Interactive storytelling. When we started on Half-Life 2, storytelling in games was generally either high fidelity and linear or low fidelity and interactive. We knew players had seen high-quality storytelling in games, but they'd never been placed right in the middle of it, able to watch it unfold around them, interact with it, and examine any part closely. While that goal excited us, we didn't yet know how it would work or what kind of technology we'd need to make it happen. We had built a variety of storytelling technology in Half-Life 1, but it was mostly presented in front of the player and lacked the interactivity and fidelity we were aiming for. So Kleiner's lab became the section of the game we used as a testbed to figure out how our interactive storytelling would actually function.
So I guess from now on, I'll just wait until like the important.
This day in particular. We've been helping people escape the city on foot. It's a dangerous route to my father's lab. Through the old canals.
What?
Today, we're finally on the verge of having a better way.
Kleiner's Lab. Kleiner's Lab was the first piece of storytelling we worked on, and the one that took the longest to figure out.
Wait, let me check something while this plays.
Player into the game, it eventually became the unifying vision for the development team in terms of storytelling. As we began building our characters and narrative delivery around the player, many questions arose, all of which felt like major risks for the game.
I mean, today would be the perfect time to release it.
Extract the important information from the scene. Could we get them to care about these characters? How would we support players with varying levels of investment in the story? How costly would it be to produce a scene like this? And how many more would we need? These and many more were questions we couldn't answer until we'd built enough of the scene and tested it with a lot of playtesters. Frustratingly, unlike many other problems we face, these weren't questions we could confidently answer until we had done significant work. We can often test gameplay ideas with low-fidelity prototypes, but if a player isn't invested in our storytelling when the characters are just gray blocks, how confident can we be that they'll care once the characters are fully realized?
Choreography. The system we built
so
to deliver Half-Life 2's storytelling was
there's gonna be a fan-made remake of Half-Life 2 with ray tracing.
Early on, we found
and I really thought that today they released it.
We needed a system that could control all the other actors, moving them around the stage, delivering their performances and speaking their lines. To handle this, the other actors would need to seamlessly mix our directorial commands with dynamic responses to the player's position and behavior. Timing was clearly going to be a major challenge, as any part of the scene might need to lengthen, contract, or even pause, depending on what the player was doing.
Hey.
Here, let me buy you a drink. Oh, and by the way, nice to finally meet you.
FacePoser. The primary tool we built to power the Choreo system was called FacePoser.
Well, at least Alex waits until you go in.
Program that allowed our animators to lay out the entire structure of
I
our
appreciate that.
timeline. The timeline contained a series of choreo commands for the actors, along with all the necessary
Not yet,
information
Alex.
for them to perform those commands. By layering these commands on the timeline, animators could easily describe how an actor might need to face one thing while talking towards another and walk to a different location, all at the same time. But the timeline wasn't a fixed linear sequence. Actors would follow their commands, but they had to respond dynamically to the world around them. An actor might take longer to move to a location if the player is in the way, or they might need to wait to deliver a line because another actor has been delayed by the player. FacePoser allowed us to rapidly iterate on scenes, trying different layouts, dialogue deliveries, and timings. This ability to quickly experiment and adjust proved critical in finding the right performances to achieve our character and narrative goals.
Oh, that's a lot.
choreo commands. This debug visualization.
We don't need to listen to this. I've listened to it like plenty of times.
Internally known as look-ats and move-tos. Actors are given targets to look at, sometimes more than one at a time, and then try to focus on the one that makes the most sense given their current state. At the same time, they might be receiving move-to commands, which tell them to move to a location and face a specific direction or object. Even these seemingly simple commands involve a lot of complexity. A scene might require an actor to talk while typing on a keyboard, all while looking at an object the player is holding. Since we couldn't predict where the player would be during playback, authoring scenes like this required us to break each element of the scene into separate pieces and layers. These could then be reassembled as needed during playback, based on the player's actions and interrupted if necessary.
Lab interactivity. In our choreo scenes, we have the player trapped for a bit, allowing us to focus on the characters and narrative. To accommodate different players, some deeply invested in the story, others unable to stand still for more than a second, we felt like we needed a constant stream of interesting details on screen. We scattered narrative elements throughout the environment, ensuring some were interactive, essentially toys for the player to tinker with. In some cases,
as in this
we embedded
teleporter,
further storytelling into these, like the cactus mini teleporter hinting at the upcoming teleporter failure. It was a delicate balance. Too much visual interest could distract players from the core of the scene. Ultimately, Kleiner's lab played it safe with interactivity, as it was the first major choreo scene. Later, in Eli's lab, we explored it more deeply, ensuring the characters themselves paid attention to what the players were tinkering with.
Delivery. It took a lot of iteration and playtesting to strike the right balance of information and emotional connection in our major choreo scenes. Each scene had a lot of information we needed to convey to the player, but we couldn't just have characters spouting exposition. Players would start thinking of them more as signposts than as people. We needed to take the time to let the characters interact with each other, allowing the player to observe the relationships. At the same time, we had to expand upon the world, giving the player a sense of everything that had happened while they were gone. All this had to be done carefully, without taking too long. We wanted the game to work for players who were less invested in the narrative. Animation became a powerful tool in communicating the emotional connections between characters, often conveying the depth of a moment quickly without overstating it. Humor was another commonly used tool, helping to puncture a setup and disarm the player when things got a bit too heavy.
Get your suit on, Gordon.
Not yet.
We wanted to create narrative links between Half-Life 1 and Half-Life 2 through our characters. Our idea was to design individuals who felt like representations of Half-Life 1's archetypes, so that players might find them familiar, almost as though they'd met them in Half-Life 1 at some point that they couldn't quite remember. We based Dr. Kleiner on the scientist model we felt was the most iconic, and his personality was largely shaped by Hal Robbins, whose voice and performances had defined the Half-Life 1 scientists. One day, when we were in the thick of trying to figure out this character, Dr. Kleiner's face came into focus, as we happened to share an elevator with an accountant from an office on another floor of our building. And looking at him, it was clear that this is Dr. Kleiner's face. Luckily, he was receptive when we asked if we could photograph him for a video game character. Tone. Setting the right tone for our characters and their dialogue was critical. We aimed for a respectful, almost pleasant style of interaction with the player, while avoiding anything that felt too subservient. This balance was especially tricky with Alex, who needed to support the player without compromising the strength of her character, something we felt was crucial for players to respect her. Her relationship with Eli was a core driver of the player's motivations, so it was important that players liked her and wanted to help her. We also wanted to contrast the warmth and camaraderie between the player's allies against the hostilities of Breen and the Combine, inspiring a sense of righteous indignation in the players for the battles ahead.
Animation. Constructing believable human motion for our characters out of many discrete layers of animation required a lot of technological iteration. Even simple actions like turning to look at something or walking to a location became more complex when combined with the need to dynamically respond to the player, and the requirements of choreo commands. For example, turning to look at something had to be fully decomposed, allowing a character to use any combination of its eyes, head, shoulders, upper torso, or full body to face a target. In Half-Life 1, human characters had their bodies separated into upper and lower halves, allowing them to walk in one direction while facing another. However, this approach was too abstract for Half-Life 2's characters. Instead, our animators created walking animations in all 8 directions of the compass, which could then be smoothly blended together at runtime.
Character reactions. Figuring out
From
what
Lamar.
characters should react to and how was an ongoing challenge. At the core, we always want the game to respond to player input. However, any response from the game can be seen as a reward by the player. So, what characters react to and what they ignore teaches the player about the kind of input the game expects. As a result, we made sure to respond to things we wanted more of, like players tinkering with devices in the lab, and ignored behaviors we wanted less of, like players repeatedly slapping Kleiner in the face with a box over and over.
Huh.
Seriously, we watched a playtester do it for 5 minutes straight.
Don't worry.
Writing. In the Half-Life 1 era, player goals in FPS games were still largely about fighting and defeating an obviously evil enemy. It was hard to get players to care about characters when they were as low fidelity as they were in Half-Life 1. With the planned improvements in character fidelity for Half-Life 2, we wanted to take a shot at making characters the driving force of the narrative. Our goal was for the player's motivations to align with those of our characters, for the player to care about these people, their hopes and fears, and to want them to succeed. With this in mind, we were able to assemble our approach to character and dialogue. We would create a set of characters who liked and cared about each other, hoping that the player would feel the same. These characters would interact in a way that felt inclusive, like a group of old friends who see the player as one of them, just someone who's been away for a while. If the characters demonstrated realistic emotional connections with each other, we believed we could build an emotional connection with the player as well.
Hang on. There's G-Man. By the way, this right here.
Gordon, if you please, I'm eager to see if your old suit still fits.
It does. Love hearing that sound again. The Valve theme.
Voice actors. To create more responsive and multidimensional characters in Half-Life 2, we needed to evolve our approach to working with voice actors. While running through a script with a modicum of direction was sufficient for much of the NPC dialogue for Half-Life 1, for Half-Life 2, we decided to give the actors more of an opportunity to be involved in helping to define the characters and bring them to life. We provided much more story context to the actors, showing them the game world, the environments their characters inhabited, and the other characters they interacted with. We sought actors who could take all that information and synthesize it into their performances to elevate their characters beyond what we had imagined. We held multiple sessions with the main actors, allowing them to digest and build upon their characters over time. For scenes where characters are interacting with each other, we'd often cue an actor with performances from other actors in the scene to create a better sense of connection and flow. Though we'd arrive at the studio with a script and a plan for the recording session, we made sure that the actors felt empowered and had the space to bring their own ideas to the character and performances. Having animators attend the voiceover sessions also proved critical, as they were responsible for stitching the characters' dialogue together with physical actions and expressions to form the resulting choreo scene. Often, animators found that their plans for how a scene would play out evolved quite a bit after working with the voice actor.
Okay. It fits.
Gordon, I see your HE
Hang on.
suit still fits you like a glove. At least the glove parts do. I've made a few modifications, but I'll just acquaint you with the essentials. Now let's see. The Mark V hazardous environment suit has been redesigned.
Power armors for pussies.
Oh dear.
Doc, we don't have time for this.
Like if you know that video. Probably shouldn't have done it when I put it on, but still.
Monitors. We use monitors a lot for storytelling in Half-Life 2 in the episodes. So much so that we even make fun of ourselves for it. The problem is they're just too damn useful. They're fantastic for expanding the world by showing events happening elsewhere. And they provide an easy way to have characters talk without needing to explain how they all got to the player's location.
Hey, Eli.
Anyone
Sorry I can't hear you. I'm
kind of story, especially one
doing something.
Cast, understands the unique frustration of trying to create natural reasons for all of your characters to come together in the same place. In this case, we were really happy with how the monitor allowed Alex to teleport away and then quickly appear in Eli's lab, making everything feel real and connected.
Alex's kiss. It's a small moment,
What?
but Alex's kiss on Eli's cheek
Oh.
is important. Eventually, we're going to ask the player to save Eli, and we want them to care about him. To build that emotional connection, we needed to show the warmth and affection between Alex and Eli. We didn't want to oversell it with dialogue or make
And
it
that's
too big of an event.
And that's what made Eli's
Not performative.
death in half
We were able
in
to
episode
iterate on the
2
subtleties of this
so
moment
heartbreaking.
until it struck just the right note.
Gordon, would you mind plugging us in?
Hang on.
Scene interactivity. At certain points in our choreo scenes, we require the player to take action. Beyond simply giving them something to do and keeping them engaged, these moments served a few key purposes. First, they allow the player to catch up, even if they've been distracted by something else in the environment.
Yeah, like
They
this.
safely pause until the player completed the task, ensuring they were back and paying attention. At the same time, it let us position the player where we needed them, which was useful for framing the scene and making sure they saw something important. In some cases, we got double value out of these moments by using them to train the player. Here, they're learning to interact with plugs and sockets, a skill they'll need for puzzles later in the game.
You gonna let Gordon throw the switch? Gordon, go right ahead.
There you go.
Very good. Final sequence. Commencing now.
I can't look.
Oh yeah, something I learned about Eli's voice actor. He was in The Lion King. The good one. Not the quote-unquote live-action remake.
Thank goodness. My relief is almost palpable.
Fantastic work, Izzy.
Well, I can't take all the credit. Dr. Freeman proved an able assistant.
Let's go ahead and bring Gordon through now.
Right you are. Speak to you again in a few moments.
Good job, Gordon. Throwing that switch and all. I can see your MIT education really pays for itself.
All right, Barney. Your turn.
Gee, thanks.
Gordon, as soon as you're in position, we'll send you to Eli's.
And not a moment too soon.
Okay.
Excellent. Initializing in 3, 2, 1. Barney, if you'd be so kind.
Good luck out there, Gordon.
Yes, indeed. We're ready to project you, Gordon. Bon voyage, and best of luck in your future endeavors. Final sequence. The hell? What is it?
It's your bet the freaking head hopper. Ready? Look out!
This is the wasteland. Back in the lab. Right here. Brain's office.
Who are you? How did you get in here?
Back to Kleiner's lab.
Don't worry, Gordon.
There he is. Oh, we're losing it again.
I'm all but certain it was Gordon Freeman.
There's Neethosaur.
He didn't come through.
Then where is he?
Behind you. Shut it down. Shut it down.
Gordon, you must get out of here. Run!
Get down out of sight. I'll come find you.
Okay, now I can sprint.
phonium extraction. Another critical tool we built into FacePoser was the phonium editor. It processed the voice actors' dialogue lines and extracted phonium to generate basic lip sync animations for our characters. For the hero characters, our animators use this as a starting point to create high-quality custom animations for each dialogue line, incorporating full facial animation. However, in a dynamic choreo scene, the animators wouldn't know exactly what the rest of the actors
That's Crowbar.
were doing. This meant it required careful layering of choreo commands and timings in FacePoser, while still maintaining the actor's ability to dynamically respond to the player.
So I don't think this is like Gordon's OG Crowbar. I think this is the one that Barney uses in Blue Shift.
Half-Life 2's release, most first-person shooters gave the player a gun or a melee weapon right off the bat, but we opted to start them empty-handed. Without a weapon, it was easier to train the player on the more novel ways they're able to interact with the world and introduce them to our story. We wanted the player to transition from fugitive to the aggressor, and arming them at the right time created that moment naturally. By the time they finally get a weapon, they're done running away. They say sometimes the best way to win is to walk away, but we all know that's not true. The best way to win is to run towards something while shooting at it.
Dynamic mixing.
Kelly Bailey!
Many sounds are playing at the same time, but some are
he's
more important than others.
He's the composer.
We need to set the volumes of the sounds
until he left.
to each other to ensure that the important ones stand out. In a movie, this sound mixing is done as a post-process, but in a game, it happens real-time, responding to the player's actions, so we can't predict ahead of time which sounds will play simultaneously. To handle this, all the sounds are grouped into types and tagged with priorities. Then during gameplay, the audio system monitors all the active sounds and lowers the volume of sounds in a group if a higher priority sound is playing. And this mixing is adjustable. If the gunshots need to be loud in one scene, we can make them higher priority there. If a specific line of dialogue needs to be heard clearly, it can then force all the other sounds to drop in volume. And we do the same thing with music. It's a subtle but very critical system, and it just prevents the soundscape from becoming too cluttered. Bullet audio. If there's one thing we're sure of, it's that a lot of bullets will fly throughout the game.
So Kelly Bailey isn't just the composer; he's like
the audio treatment
main audio guy.
Unfortunately, bullets in the game are essentially instantaneous,
right?
So we can't just attach a sound to them and rely on the movement for positioning. So after some experimentation, we landed on this solution. By figuring out the closest point on the bullet's trajectory to the player's ear, we calculate the exact time and position the bullet would conceptually pass them. We then play two different sounds at that point to fake a Doppler effect, one for the bullet's approach and one for its departure. And we delay the departure sound based on the calculated time the bullet passed by.
Audio caching. Another problem we ran into was the sheer amount of audio in the game. With all the gameplay sounds, music, and dialogue, we had too much audio to be able to store it all in memory. Memory was at a premium in 2003. But as you can imagine, we need to be able to play sounds immediately, especially if they're gameplay related. So we built an audio cache, which stored only the first 125 milliseconds of every audio file and kept that in memory. That 125 millisecond time was our best guess for how long it would take us to be able to stream an audio file in from disk. Then, whenever a sound was played in-game, we'd play the start of it from our audio cache while simultaneously kicking off a load of the full audio file from disk. By the time our cache start ended, we'd have the file loaded and continue playing the rest of the sound. There were some other minor features, like keeping recent sounds fully in memory so that high traffic ones didn't need to be loaded constantly. In today's engines, all kinds of assets, beyond just sounds, typically use the same kind of strategy.
Gotta run.
Physics sound. Getting physics to feel right for the player meant that the sounds produced by physics had to sound right too. As humans, we're all used to how objects and materials sound during various
Yeah, so
interactions,
Kelly Bailey
even if it's not something we actively
is
notice.
composer, musician, programmer, and
We
sound
couldn't account
designer.
for everything. We wanted to focus on the details that contributed most to making our
So I guess he
physical
did the
sense deliver.
sounds for
We
sound designing
prefer
for
object
Half-Life.
sounds for collisions and impacts. This allowed an object like a wooden crate to have custom sounds when it collided with other objects or classes of objects. Next, we began dynamically modifying these sounds based on the characteristics of the physical event,
Oh, shit.
the masses involved, and the force of the collision.
Hang on.
This worked great for collisions, but didn't hold up in other interactions like objects scraping against each other. In reality, a wooden crate makes a different sound when it scrapes against
So
a wall
apparently,
when it's thrown against that same wall.
Mike
Let
Moraski,
me tell you, nobody has done more research on the
who
nuances
composed the
of
scores
wooden
for
crate's physical properties
TF2, Portal 2, Half-Life Alyx.
we implemented
Apparently he worked on visual effects for Lord of the Rings and The Matrix.
These sounds were also dynamically modified based on details like material hardness or type of metal. Getting this system to sound right required countless
Let's
small
see, he was the lead massive crowd technical director in
We
Fellowship,
also experimented with custom
senior
sounds for
massive
rolling
technical
objects
director in Two
because we weren't
Towers,
happy with the results.
lead technical director for Matrix Reloaded, Sentinel Swarm lead for Matrix Revolutions, and senior massive technical director for Return of the King. So,
Automating DSP. All the sounds the player hears are processed through our Digital Signal Processing System, or DSP. And this just refers to how audio is altered to reflect the environment the player is in. For example, the same sound will differ when heard in a parking garage, a small room, outdoors. In Half-Life 1, we manually placed invisible nodes throughout the world to define these DSP settings for each space. For Half-Life 2, we knew that manual placement was just going to be way too time-consuming, especially since we wanted a larger game, and we still only had one audio person on the team. So we built a system that automatically determines the DSP settings around the player in real time. It does this by analyzing the space around the player, assessing the volume they're within. It examines the materials that make up the environment, basically. And then the system matches that space to one of the 25 hand-authored basic DSP types. We adjust some parameters, and we create the fully detailed DSP that modifies the sounds the player hears.
okay, time to go. Okay, root canal. I'm gonna leave it there. I gotta tell you, it feels so good to play this again. Like, I'm a huge Valve fan. Like, it's great to see that Half-Life 2 is getting like some support for its 20th anniversary. How long have I been recording for? An hour 18. Okay, I will continue later. So that is all for this time. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, and click that notification bell to notify every time I upload an episode. Ultron Prime, out.